Oh, perfect.
Hello, testing. Testing, testing. Okay.
So they're not taking it on.
This is a test. Can everybody hear this? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I know that they don't have difficulty parking because it's got the best parking lot. in
Yeah,
town.
definitely.
Yeah. All ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you all for coming in on this lovely, beautiful day outside. There's no better place to be than an author event, in my opinion. But thank you. Usually if it rains, we get a lot of people, and if it's sunny, then those will be. Thank you very much. And I know they're not in the room, but I want to thank the Bethel Public Library. We love partnering with them. When most of you have been in our store across the street, and it fits about 35 people comfortably, which we often do for author events, but when we start getting larger, which this, the original sign up was larger, but we always bump across the street, and it's easy because it's across the street. We can bring the books over. They're very welcoming, and I think they deserve better than just mere thanks, because they're closed on Sundays.
Oh, wow.
So they open for us because we're good friends, and I appreciate that. So we love living in a small town where we can do that. Birds Books is a very small independent bookstore in Connecticut. We're one of, I think, about 18 of us in Connecticut that belong to the New England Independent Booksellers Association. We're all friends with each other. We all know each other. It has been a very rugged 3 or 4 years, but we're still here and celebrating our 12th anniversary this fall. We've been 5.5 years in this location directly across the street. It was new construction that we were in under fire, and it's been the best thing we ever did. So we're next door to a toy store, so I don't have to carry the toys, and she doesn't have to carry the books, and it's just wonderful. But bookstores, independent bookstores thrive on community. Corporate bookselling is corporate bookselling, and I opened the Barnes and Noble in Danbury when it first opened. So I do know exactly what it is, and I very much appreciate them because I do not have to carry their estate fairs. So you know what I mean. I mean, it's that all of those really popular kind of TV, Star Wars type stuff. I don't need to carry it. I can curate away and buy the bookstore that I want to shop. So if there's something that somebody doesn't want, that's fine, but I can get what you do want. And we order twice a week all the time. So particularly this time of year, we are very much supported by the school system. And that keeps us going because they get classroom books, people special order all the time. We have a listening service called Libro FM, which is exactly like the dreaded A's word, Audible. And so we have Libro FM is the independent version of Audible. So we have everything that they have. It's just Jeff and different. So, and that's who we are. And so thank you for being part of the independent bookstore community. Appreciate it. I also really want to thank Lynne because it was a long drive to get here. And I am touched that she is here. So Wendy is not able to be here. She had a family emergency last night, but she is going to come here and sign books. So if you have Wendy's books that you purchased from us, you're welcome to leave them with us and we'll get them signed for you. Not a problem. We can also just let you know she's dropping down if you want to do that. So that's certainly a possibility. So we're going to be really informal about this. I'm going to introduce Lynn. I'm going to tell you about Wendy because I think her book just hit the market and it's just it's a happy thing when somebody's book is brand new, so I really want you to know about her book a little bit. And then Lynn's gonna read from her book. We're gonna ask questions, including me. I mean, I have a bunch of questions too. And then, Lynn is available to sign books or discuss or visit or whatever we choose to do. But it's our book. Author events are very casual. We really do like to find out, where all this came from. So, Lynne Constantine is the pen names of sisters, Lynne Constantine and Valerie Constantine. Lynne and Valerie are Wall Street Journal and USA Today's international best-selling authors with over 1 million copies sold worldwide. They are Library Reads Hall of Fame authors. Their books have been translated into 28 languages, are available in 33 countries, and are in development for both television and film. Their books have been praised by USA Today, the Sunday Times, People Magazine, Good Morning America, among many others. Their debut novel, The Last Mrs. Parrish, is a Reese Witherspoon book club selection. We have it in paper. And I want to quote Gabby Coatsworth, who is a friend of both of ours, who is also a writer. Fans of suspenseful thrillers with twists and turns that keep them on their toes will love this. Set in Washington, there are some political ramifications, but it's the relationships between characters that kept me guessing. Wrongly, I might add. The twists in the last few chapters were up to the author's usual standards, unguessable, and yet so satisfying. So I love that, the way she puts things together. I want to tell you a little bit about Wendy. Wendy Walker is the author of the psychological suspense novels All Is Not Forgotten, and In the Night Before, Don't Look for Me, and American Girl. Her novels have been translated into 23 foreign languages, top bestseller lists both nationally and abroad, and have been optioned for television and film. Wendy holds degrees from Boston University and Georgetown Law School. She is a former family law attorney with training in child advocacy and has worked in finance in several areas of the law. Sarah Liddell posted a review of her book 3 days ago, I think, in the New York Times. And quote, Walker intersperses Louise's account of her descent into desperate countertactics with a separate tale, an investigation into human remains found in a hunter's shelter in the woods not far away. It is the fun of figuring out how everything ties together again. The quote is, this is a slow burn, chilling, and intelligent political domestic thriller that draws parallels to the likes of Scandal and Rebecca. That's yours.
I was going to say, that doesn't sound.
That's yours. You just read one of my first questions.
Oh, well, who did that come from?
Where did that come from? So you go ahead and read. I was gonna say
Alice,
here.
no, you have to tell me who that quote was from.
It's on my website. I'll look it up.
Oh, okay. Okay, I like that. That's a nice quote.
Pulled it out of, is it Bookist? I'll look.
Book list, maybe. Okay. Well, thank you again. Yes, thank you for coming on a beautiful sunny day instead of sitting on the beach and spending some time with me. And Wendy wanted me to extend her apologies. She had an emergency with her son. He's fine, but they were in the ER. He just got back from Japan where he had heat stroke. So it was, some scary times, but she would be here if she could. So I'm sure, she'll definitely make the trip back to the bookstore. So before I read, I guess I thought I would just talk a little bit about the book. So normally my sister and I do these things together, but when she's not around, I get to sort of say anything I want. She can't dispute it. But we had a lot of fun writing it. It's the first book that we've written that takes place in DC. And I mean, originally it was actually set in Connecticut, and we were going to have it would be still a senator, but he was going to be a senator from Connecticut. And then we realized, and he was going to take the train back and forth, and all the action was going to take place in the House. And then we thought, that's the stupidest thing. Why not set it in DC? It's much more interesting. There's a lot more going on. So we did have a lot of fun. I'm from Baltimore originally, and my sister lives in Annapolis. So of course we are familiar. A lot of people want to know how do you know anything about DC? And many years ago, my father worked for the vice president, and my sister worked in the White House, so that she was the one who sort of got those parts and all the scandal parts, of course, and all the sex parts, I like to say too, as my sister has. So the story is about a woman, the senator's wife. Her name is Sloan Montgomery, and we love Sloan. She's a woman of integrity who has suffered a tragedy, and she's remarried now. It's been 2 years since her first husband was killed. She's married to his best friend, whose wife was also killed in the same sort of thing, which I'll read to you. Anyway, they're back in DC, and Sloan has been dealing with lupus, which is a chronic autoimmune disease. And so as a result of her medication, she needs to have hip surgery. And so they decide to hire a home health care worker, a woman, and they find this young woman named Athena who seems perfect. And she moves in, and Sloan has the surgery, and everything seems to be going great. But then she's thrown into a lupus flare, and she starts getting worse and worse. And she begins to wonder, is she really in a flare, or is someone making her sick? So that's sort of the premise, and then it takes off from there. So I'm just going to read the second chapter. And in this book also we don't normally have the male perspective. We do have it in this book. We usually don't like the men to be able to have a voice, but in this case, there's the male perspective. So this is Whit's chapter. Despite Whit's attempts to calmly talk things out with Peg, she'd been cold and belligerent since their blow-up at the beach 2 weeks ago. He'd suggested they take some time apart, but Peg wouldn't hear of it. Now, as he pulled into the driveway, he frowned. What was Robert's car doing here? Leaving his golf clubs in the Porsche, he quickened his pace, anxious to see what was going on. Peg, he called out as he entered the hallway, but she didn't answer. He heard voices coming from the living room. There he found Peg sitting on the sofa, a crumpled tissue in her hand, her face mottled and her eyes wet with tears. Robert looked up as Whit entered the room, his expression somber. What's going on? What are you doing here, Robert? Whit asked. Peg called me this morning and asked me to come over. As you can see, she's quite upset, Robert said. Whit sighed and, walking over to the bar cart, poured himself a bourbon. He sat in one of the chairs across from the sofa and leaned forward, his gaze fixed on his wife. What's wrong now, Peg? Her eyes were blazing with pure hatred, her lips pressed together in suppressed fury. Whit closed his eyes and rubbed his fingers across his forehead, wearied by the expression on her face and the unending loathing that greeted him every night. You really are a complete shit, she said, but why should it surprise me, given that you're such a damn liar? She got up and left the room, coming back in a minute with a folder, which she thrust at him. I've been having you followed for a month now. It's all there. Photos of you and Madeline, records of conversations between the two of you. I knew you were lying. All this time trying to make me believe I'm imagining things. She ground out the words through clenched teeth. You hired a detective to follow me? How dare you? Whit grabbed the file from her and scanned the contents. The photos showed him and Madeline at various public places, looking very cozy, but they proved nothing. He threw down the folder. Look, you know I've had to spend time with her, flatter her a little to get her support, but that's all it is. Robert shook his head. I thought you were better than this. Peg snatched the glass of wine from the table, downed it in one gulp, and hurled the empty glass across the room where it crashed against the exposed brick and shattered. The report, she said, it shows you going into a suite at the Salamander Hotel and staying for hours. You're not talking your way out of this. Whit sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. He was so tired of fighting with her. Yes, I went to the Salamander, but it was to meet with Madeline and Fred. I've told you that before. He doesn't typically like to meet at his house. And you shouldn't have involved Robert in your paranoid fantasies. Do you want me to air all your dirty laundry in front of your cousin? How you're always drunk and half the time I don't know where you are? You're the one who's been cheating on me for years. What the hell are you talking about, you liar? You're the cheater, not me. He turned to Robert. Do you have any idea what I've had to put up with all these years? Her drunken rages, the constant accusations. I've had it with your crazy cousin. Robert's face hardened. Now, just a minute. He's lying, Robert. Peg was sobbing now. The only reason I drink so much is because he treats me like shit. He's never home. He tries to make me think I'm crazy. She wiped the tears from her cheeks and looked daggers at Whit. I hate you, she shrieked. If you hate me so much, why are you still here? Where am I going to go? You took my best years. But there had been no best years, he thought. The woman he'd married turned out to be very different from the one he'd romanced. He couldn't take it any longer. My best years, too. Whit's voice was flat. I can't waste any more of them. I want a divorce, he said without looking at her. You're crazy if you think I'm going to let her have you, Peg's hand dug under the couch cushion, and suddenly she was moving toward him. Whit's eyes widened when he saw what she was holding, the Colt double-action revolver that had belonged to her grandfather. Peg, what the hell? Whit shouted, springing up from his seat. Put the gun down. You used me to get close to Robert and help your career. Now that you're a big senator and you don't need me anymore, you're going to throw me away like a piece of trash? Robert's face turned white. Peg, don't do this. Give me the gun. Peg's eyes were bulging and she was screaming obscenities at Whit, frantically waving the gun at him. Say goodbye, Whit. I hope she was worth it. No, Robert yelled, jumping in front of her. Whit watched as if in slow motion while Robert grabbed her. Get out of the way, she yelled, struggling with him. Peg, stop. Robert reached for her hand and the gun went off. Peg stood, frozen, her mouth wide in horror as a scarlet stain spread across Robert's shirt. He staggered back, falling to the floor, and she began to scream, a loud wail that pierced the silence. Oh my God, what have you done? Whit knelt on the floor next to his friend, helpless as he watched the pool of blood spread under his body. Peg was sobbing hysterically, and as Whit looked up, he saw that she was still gripping the gun. Peg, give me the gun. He jumped up, grabbing her arm in an attempt to get his hands on the weapon. He struggled to wrest it away, but her grip tightened, the gun dangerously close to her face. The second shot was deafening, and he recoiled in horror. Peg slid from his arms and fell to the floor next to Robert, whose body was still. Whit heaved, unable to hold back the vomit rising from his belly as he picked up the phone and called 911. Hurry, please, there's been an accident. My wife, oh God, my wife, she shot her cousin, Senator Chase. His voice broke with a sob. Then she turned the gun on herself. Please hurry. So that is the setup. And then it starts 2 years later, and she's married to, we haven't met Sloan yet, but she's married to Whit. So a little bit of a graphic chapter, but I don't know. I never know what to read. So
Do you find yourself, I mean, when you talk about blood, you know, the blood pool and all of that, I mean, how much into research with something like that do you actually go?
well, I didn't shoot anyone, but
I mean, we've all watched
yes, yes.
TV and seen it done well and seen
Right,
it done
right.
bad.
I mean, we didn't actually do a lot. Actually, I think my sister wrote that scene. So who knows what she might have done to come up with that idea. But we don't typically have a lot of violence like that. I have to say, in our books, it's really the first, I think that's the first book that we really have had something so graphic. I also write under Elsie Shaw, and in that book, it's more conspiracy driven, and there is a lot, there's car chase, you know, there's fights, and I usually will just talk to people that I know are good at that and say, does this make sense? And I usually have to write more because my inclination is, like, I don't know about you all, but when I'm watching a movie, I don't like fight scenes that go on for 20 minutes like the men do, right? It's on and on. So I will go to like a man because that's what they like. And then I'll make it like in between. Yeah, pare it down a little bit. So that's that. But I mean, really, we focus a lot more on the psychological. So that's the bloodiest scene in the book. If you're turned off by that, that's it. From there on, it's much more cat and mouse and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
So was it fun being back in DC?
It really was. It was a lot of fun. I mean, there's a White House dinner that was a lot of fun to write. You know, all of the intrigue and sort of two-faced of politicians, you know, that comes out. And it's funny because people will ask my sister, again, she's the one who worked in politics all those years ago. And she's like, you know, it just doesn't change. It doesn't matter. Like, because of human nature doesn't change. Right. So, and as we all know, most politicians, you know, are not the most, you don't typically have the most stellar character. I don't think you get to a position of power without making a lot of deals and without a lot of compromises, sadly. You know, I'm not saying that they're all like that, but there's no politicians in the room right now. But yeah, I mean, what I would say for the senator's wife, I mean, we don't sit and think, the way we come up with our stories is usually the twist is the first thing, or, you know, we take a situation and we say, this is what would normally happen. How can we turn it on its head and make it be something different? Or like in some cases, Stranger in the Mirror, that was really, we wanted to explore amnesia. So that was more theme driven, but typically we do start more with the twist. And then we say, okay, whose story is it? Who are the characters? And we take our time and we develop those characters. And then we let a lot of it evolve. So we don't have a strict outline. Now, if Wendy were here, she would tell you she outlines everything. So we're sort of opposite on that. But we do have a general idea of what's going to happen at the end and how we're going to get there. But we do let the characters evolve and develop. So if we were going to go down, say, one route, and then as we get to know those characters better, it's something that they wouldn't do, then we will change it. We're always going to choose the character over the plot. I mean, we still want to make it interesting, but. you can
But
see-
do you, for instance, would you take one character and she would take another and then you develop it that way, or do you go back and forth? I mean, how is it, talk about working together.
Sure. So with the last Mrs. Parrish, we developed the characters all together, but she wrote a lot of Amber, because she's a lot more like Amber, if you no, she's not, she's really not. And I wrote, all of Daphne, but I remember at the time she was the president of the Assistants League in her town. She was super busy, and I was in this really want to get this book done, and I was very impatient. So I would be like, all right, I'll just write that chapter. So I did write a lot of Amber as well, and it worked in that book because that was a part one, part two, and it was. I guess because of the shift in the structure of that book. But what we came to realize was that, and especially in subsequent books, that you're always, even if you're in writing one point of view, that person's in your other person's point of view. So, we both have to be fully invested in every character and be able to know what the voice is and what the dialogue is going to sound like. Otherwise, you're going to see a difference. So our process has evolved to the point where now we do is we write scenes. So we speak every morning when we're in the midst of writing a book, and we'll say, okay, I'll write this, you write that. We hang up, we go write, and we do give each other the freedom, even if we say this scene's going to be about X, Y, Z, if all of a sudden we're inspired to change it, we do, because we know we're going to revise it so many times. And then we email each other our chapters, and then we'll talk again. And we'll also say, feel free to edit or add anything that you want. So I'll send it to my sister and she'll send it back and track changes, and I'll accept what I like, or, not what I don't. And then sometimes I'll write a half a chapter and say, I'm kind of bored. You want to finish this? And she'll say, sure. And vice versa. And, and we'll work that way. And then the other thing is that she really likes describing rooms, and, I'm more into like the action and the emotion and the dialogue. So oftentimes too, I can do it, but she does it better. So I'll just put in caps, describe this living room, or do that and send it to her, and then so it's really nice, and it all ends up together. And then we go through 2 or 3 times when we're finished and revise, so that it's quite possible one sentence is half me and half my sister. And, which is, I think, why people say, oh, I couldn't tell that it was 2 people writing it. Even though we do have similar styles, we really try to hone it to that point.
How did you start this up? I mean, how did it begin?
We've always been big readers. And we used to go, my mom used to take us, we're 14 years apart, so we didn't really grow, I didn't grow up necessarily the same way with her, but I used to go to the library once a week with my mom and pick a book out. And then as I got older, my mother and my aunt and my sister and I would all read the same book. We sort of had an informal book club, and we read a lot of Susan Howitch, which was one thing that really helped us with point of view, I think. And we also read a lot back then. The family saga, like of different ethnicities, was very popular. And so we were reading a lot of, of that. And I said to my sister, I guess I was in my 30s at this point, and I said, there really aren't any Greek books about Greek families, and we're Greek, and we both are, voracious readers and like to write. And I said, why don't we write one together? So I went and I bought a book, How to Write and Sell Your First Novel. and we charted everything out, and it took us, I guess, about a year. We were almost finished, and then we both took a week off of work, and because we were working full time, we used to meet once a week. And she came over to my house, and this was before laptops, she brought her desktop and plugged it down in my living room, and I was upstairs, and we wrote all day, every day, and we finished it in a week. And it was our first draft, and we sent it out to a bunch of agents like idiots, because you can't, right? We didn't know that we needed to revise it. And that was called Circle Dance, which is still available. And we have since revised it a little bit, and it took a couple of years, and we got a very small publisher, a Greek publisher, and I think they did maybe 2,500 copies. And then I moved to Connecticut, and we, I had twins at the time, and I was homeschooling them, and she was doing her thing. So it was about maybe 10 years after that I saw an article in Writer's Digest for this conference in New York called Thriller Fest. And I was working on a thriller, which is now published under L.C. Shaw, because I was in corporate marketing. And, it was taking me years and years and years. And so I went to Thriller Fest and, feeling pretty proud of myself that I had this one book and working on the other book. And I'm meeting all of these people who are younger than I am, and they've written like 10 books, right? So I felt like a real slouch. And I came home and I built a website. We revised Circle Dance and we bought the rights back from the publisher. We self-published it. And I finished my thriller. And then my sister said, she got jealous because I was writing and she wasn't. So she was like, how about if we write together? And so we wrote another book called Black Eyed Susans, which took place in Maryland. And I, at this point too, sending to agents, getting rejections, which is all part of it, but getting to know different agents. And I started going to Thriller Fest every year, and I asked her to come with me. And first she said, well, I'm not a thriller writer. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter. It's because it's craft and it's networking, all of that. And so we got a lot of interest in the Black Eyed Susans, but it was one of those things where it was like just almost there, but not quite there. And so one piece of advice I heard over and over again is just don't get stuck on the one book. Like if you're not getting any traction, put it down and write the next book. And the next book was The Last Mrs. Parrish. So we wrote that book together, and that was the one, I think we submitted it. At this point, I knew who all the agents were. So I'm like, all right, these are the 6 agents that we're going to try. And I really thought they were all going to take it. I mean, we had a good feeling about the book. And one thing we did different with The Last Mrs. Parrish is we hired a freelance editor that was, that came recommended by someone in the business. So, that I knew was someone who knew what agents were looking for, and she had been an agent before. And we were going to hire her just to do the first like 50 pages, because that's what, when you submit it. And so she did, and I asked her just to like let us know what the pacing was, and she sent everything back, and she didn't comment on it. So I was like, did she not like it? So I emailed her. She said, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to miss my deadline. I loved it. In fact, I wished I could have read more. I thought the pacing was great. And my sister's husband said to her, I'll pay for it. Just have her do the whole edit. Stop messing around. Just have her do everything. So, which was really nice of him. So we did. And she said to us, we got on the call and she said, I know this isn't a developmental edit. So the difference is a developmental, they really look at the whole structure and they might say, this is working, this isn't working. I think you need more here. I think you need that. And then a copy edit is really more just cleaning up the language. And that's what we had hired her to do, was just a copy edit. So she said, I know it's not a developmental edit, but I have to tell you, I think that the way you're ending part 1 is cutting the tension too soon. And I think, it's a problem because you're not nervous going into part 2 because we've given too much away. So we talked for about an hour and I said, all right, well, what if we stopped it here and we added a part 3? We figured a solution out, which is what we did for The Last Mrs. Parrish. And I'm really convinced that had we not done that, it might not have gotten picked up. You know what I mean? It could have been, again, another one of those just misses. And so having that third person kind of come in, looking at it from a different view of what you can't see, I think it really made a big difference. So anyway, we thought, okay, this is good. And we're going to get these agents right away. And the one agent who she recommended was going to be at Thriller Fest. So she had said to me, I'll try to read it beforehand and maybe we can have coffee. So I had her text and we had that. 3 of the other ones, one of them said, I don't know who this Amber is, but she's not very nice. And I don't know why she can't get her own life. Like that was the whole point. Like, okay, you're missing the point. This isn't women's fiction. This is right. Yeah, like that's the kind of the idea. But so, all right. Another one just didn't want it. One we didn't hear from. So I was getting discouraged. And we were at Thriller Fest, and the one that knew our editor said, I'm running out of time, but I can just meet you for a couple of minutes in the lobby. So I figured that meant no, well, but she just wanted to be polite. And I was about to go pay to go to Pitch Fest because they have agents there every year, like 50 agents that you can then go. And a friend of mine was having lunch, it's a little complicated, with this agent I was waiting to hear from. And she texted me and said, you don't have to go to Pitch Fest if you don't want to. So I was like, what? So we met the agent in the lobby and she's like, I've only read 80 pages, but I'm ready to offer you representation. And we said, well, we're ready to take it. Right. So yeah, so we got our agent, 5 years after lots of rejections, in the lobby at Thriller Fest, which was great, surrounded by all of our friends who were, because we said, can we tell people? She's like, yes, of course you can tell everybody. And then she said, I'll let you know if we need to do edits, because oftentimes the agent will take it, but they'll still want to do more work. And she said no, that her boss read it and said it's ready to go. And 6 days later, we had a preemptive offer from HarperCollins, which, from Harper and from,
Never happened.
yeah, with the other arm of, I'm thinking. And of course, we didn't know. We're like, oh, that's not, I mean, we thought it was exciting, but we didn't know how, yeah, how that, so, we signed up, and then, that's sort of changed everything, but,
How's Harper been as a publisher?
they did a really good job. We're not with them anymore, we're with Random House now. And they were great to work with, very, super professional. Yeah, I really have. Yeah. So, but actually, Random House has been amazing. We're with Bantam, which is a different, I guess it's maybe a smaller imprint. And with the senator's wife, we had it sold at auction, and there were 4 other publishers that we spoke with. And when we talked to Bantam, first of all, the editor was the only one of all that had very specific ideas that she wanted to do. She's like, it's ready to go, but this is what I would do. And again, we used a freelance editor, a different one for this one. They brought their whole marketing team, their PR team to the meeting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have been, it's been miraculous how they've been, I have to say, because I have a marketing background. So of course I'm kind of the pain in the butt that's always saying, like, can you do this? I haven't had to say anything. They think of things before. I don't even worry about it. It's so nice. I don't have to say, what about this? What about that?
I've had a great conversation with the publicist at Bethel. She emailed me, and
Sarah?
yeah,
She's wonderful.
I had concerns about this, that, and the other thing, she said, everything okay, you got all the books you need, blah, blah, blah. She was just great. And there's very seldom that bookstores hear from that part of the
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
No, usually if you're sort of working through an event, you'll hear from someone.
But not the executive public. Yeah, they're just, like I said, they're just wonderful. I hear from them all the time. They're enthusiastic, they're super creative. They're like 3 different marketing people on it. Even the book club assets that they put together are gorgeous, and there's like specialty drinks for each character, and things that you wouldn't. Yeah, it's clear that they love what they're doing, and they're really, so we feel like we've found a great home, and our editor is stellar. Yeah, and so respectful. That's the other thing. She's always saying, listen, this is your book, these are my suggestions, but she's right with everything, so we go along with everything that she says. So it's been a happy ending there. Yeah.
Well, the quote that I read earlier, I'm going to come back to it, and I didn't find immediately who it was, but I will let you know.
Okay.
This slow burn, chilling, and intelligent political / domestic thriller draws parallels to the likes of Scandal and Rebecca. How do you feel about that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, Rebecca. Yeah, Daphne and I are hanging out together. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I have to tell you, as someone who is in a week and a half going to have a hip replacement and scarcely live in daylight zone.
I told you it's
not lupus, but I do have torn tendons that have to be replaced.
Or do you have a home healthcare worker coming? Then it's gonna be fine. Listen, it's not. It's no. It's not a complication of the hip surgery. That it's I know, but you're no.
Getting homebound PT, so I'm sitting here going.
No, yeah, I know. You'll be fine. Yeah.
I want to reiterate to people here how much the book trade has changed, because more and more publishers are consolidating, as you know. I go to Random House a lot. And an imprint is a small company within a large company. So when you say Bantam or you say Doubleday or any of those, they're individual with quite their own personality, individual publishing houses under the umbrella of Penguin. So when someone says imprint, that's what it is. But it's much harder to get your foot that far in the door And first of all, having that kind of response is very unusual. Agents are necessary, edits are necessary, and the only reason I really mention this is the number of people that are self-publishing now, and their expectation for that being like this is completely not a thing. Because most self-publishing doesn't get it, an editor, most self-publishing doesn't really clean it up. They bring, you know, whatever it is they bring to the table, it's not professional to the degree that obviously this book has gone through iterations, editing, and working through and rethinking and recrafting something that is a final product that has finesse and is worthy of being published. So the book trade has got pickier and pickier and pickier about the kinds of things that they publish. I know some people that have waited forever and gone to the self-publishing route, but bookstores can't pick up self-publishing books most times because either they make the profit or we do. If you spend thousands of dollars to get a book published, you're going to want to get profit out of yourself. I don't blame them, but I can't help you there if I can't make this happen. It's a real catch-22 when you want to be supportive of local people. But I just, the reason that I say this is for you to appreciate what it takes to get here and to hold the book in your hand that you're holding in your hand. It really is very special. It really is a long journey. It really is work. So people think they sit around and write on their summers, and that's not you know? So I only mention that because I would hear people's journeys from where I sit all the time, and each one is its own story and worthy of hearing. But you can tell when people really put a professional edge on it. So I really want you to hold your little treasure about it. How's your family in support of this? I mean, you must sequester yourself and run off and do this. Are you a binge writer or a slow writer?
I get, well, probably more steady. It's, my kids are now 22. So they're like, well, my daughter's asleep until like, she's working full time, but if she's not working late until later, she's sleeping all the day. And my son, so they're independent. So that's all good. And even when they were in, I guess they were in high school too, when we were doing all of that. So it would have been a different story, I think. Well, when I was homeschooling, of course, which I did for maybe 5 years, I didn't have any creativity left. I was so tired. I couldn't write anything. But, and my husband is supportive. I mean, he works from home. It's funny. We both work on the 3rd floor of our house, and he had built a desk for me because we're on the beach block, so you can see the water from our house, but there's no doors there, and I have to shut the door. So he works there now, and I go right past him into my door, and we don't even have a cup of coffee together during the day. I don't know, like it's fine because he's on the phone or he's busy all day. And yeah, I think the only time it's a little tough is like touring. I was gone for 2 weeks or whatever at my sister's, but again, my kids are fine, and I mean, they're really all fine without me. The dogs were sad. That's the hardest part. Like, I would get a picture of my lab looking really sad. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be home soon. So, yeah.
What do you do for the questions?
Yes.
So have you already in your mind, once you're finished with that, how many steps ahead are you in your writing? How many books do you have down the rabbit hole?
That's a great question. A lot. So that's the funny thing is that when you're out promoting, like we're promoting this book, but we just finished writing the sequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish. So that was, that's, I'm just doing like a final read through. So that's what you're thinking about. And sometimes like you almost forget the book that you're doing now. And I'm actually thinking, I just had a call with my editor about the next book. So that's what I've been thinking about. And I'll be in the shower, and that's when I'll get an idea. I really need to get the shower, that you can write in the shower. Because it's always the times when you have right. And so I'm making notes about all of that. And then I've also written a couple short stories that were a lot of fun. One for Bantam, and like a novella, so maybe 30,000 words. And I'm trying to also do some screenplays. So I'm trying to adapt some of our other things. I I guess, I just go up to my office at like 8 a.m. and I stay up there all day. And unless I have some, fun plan, which is not very often, to do, maybe to go to the beach or do something. So I'm always, if I don't have anything to work on, I kind of go nuts. So all the time.
Are you writing a screenplay for your other book?
Yes, I'm writing. So I'm writing I already wrote I wrote a pilot for so I mentioned I write under Elsie Shaw, which is Lynne. Yes. So I wrote a pilot for the network, and I'm, trying to get a manager. Everything is really slow in California, of course. And of course, there's a writer strike and the actor strike right now. All of that is going on. But I had written sort of a pitch for my film agent to try to sell it as a show. And then this friend who was helping me, he said, you really need to just write this pilot yourself. So I said, okay. So I took a class and I wrote that. And then The Wife Stalker it hasn't been adapted. And everybody keeps telling me that they think that's a hard one. And I can totally see how it could be a movie. So I'm just, I don't know if it'll be any good. I'm just going to try my hand at it, writing the screenplay for that as well, which is a different part of the brain. So it's almost like, reading nonfiction and fiction at the same time. Even though they're both fiction, it's just a different thing. So that's what I'm working on. More dialogue. And it's, when I was taking the class, the first thing, and I handed my first couple of assignments, and the teacher wrote back and goes, yeah, you can tell you're a novelist. Remember, it's only what they can see and hear. So I'm like, oh, okay. It's a really hard shift. And I hated it at first. But then, so you can put some of the stuff in the direction, like attitudes and this and that, but yeah, it's a lot of dialogue and description, and I like the internal thought. So I definitely prefer novel. But it can be fun, sort of getting into it. It's a different skill set, I think.
What class do you take for that?
I just did an online class that you got like a professor, some feedback. And then really the best thing is reading a lot of screenplays too, which is what I've been doing. So, I know, just like with learning how to write a book, you're not going to be great right away, but I figure, and I do know from talking to other friends who have done screenplays, like apparently scripts go through 50 to 100 revisions. So I'm like, all right, so how bad can it be, right? If they're going to revise it. I don't know. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So obviously one of my favorite things about your books is the twists and turns. Do you and your sister ever disagree on what that twist and turn should be?
Yes. This is recording though, right? So I got to be careful. We do sometimes. Generally what will happen is, not in the beginning, because but we won't start writing the book until we've agreed on that. And so we'll both go through and we both have to be excited about it. So, but what will happen sometimes is, it just happened again. I'm trying to think with Parrish. Our agent wanted us to change a couple of things, and then she might say, well, okay, I think we should go down this road, but it changes like everything in the whole book and it unravels the whole thing, and you can't do that. You know what I mean? So that can be difficult where we have to talk it through. But really generally, we might kind of knock heads initially, and then we'll take a breath, and then we'll both talk it through, and we always come to the same place, because it's not a matter of ego or like I want it to be me. It's really a matter of trying to figure out what works best with the story. And I've also learned, if an editor says like this is a problem, but it's something that needs to happen, then we'll say, all right, how can we make it work then? Why isn't it working? Why do we have to, how can we change it so that we don't have to change? Because you can pull one linchpin and the whole thing collapses, right? And then it's like, no, I'm not going to start completely from scratch. So that's when it gets a little bit tricky. But for the most part, we do. We always say we should make up some stories where we really got in a big fight, but we haven't thought of a good one yet. So. Yeah.
So when you're traveling together, you don't come up with stories just from seeing people and all that stuff, or you just sort of catalog it?
No, well, we were saying we should come, because people always want to know if we disagree. So we're saying like we should make something up, but we don't know. We don't. We get along. We get along well. So which we wouldn't be able to write together. Yeah, if we didn't.
Say it's the most creative.
Oh gosh.
Come on.
Oh. I think in different ways. So I think she's more creative, as I said, with the descriptions, right? That's more her. And I think more maybe for story structure, I think is more my strength, and kind of seeing the whole big picture and how it needs to go. Not that she's, again, not that she can't do it, but I think that that's the more of the strength that I bring to that.
Appear to have the personality of finish.
I do. I definitely do.
Your sister like.
So, yeah, well, now, I mean, it was a struggle, but we've learned how to work together now. So now, yeah, I mean, she's a perfectionist, and I think that's the difference. So for me, I know that things are going to get better in revision, so I can go more quickly. You know what I mean? Where she'll struggle over a sentence for 10 minutes, and I'm like, just write it, you know, and we'll fix it later. And I think she's gotten better with that.
Probably good, because we're not interested in classified directory.
Right.
We're textbook.
Yes. Yeah.
So the way you speak quickly, you speak everything that's in your head. And that is a plus.
Yeah.
Because you can take things out if you put them down that are too much, but getting them in there is the hardest part.
Exactly.
That you sound like you played well.
I think we do at this point. I mean, and we're both very respectful of each other's time. So if we just know, we'll map it out and say, this is where we need to be. Now, of course, if life gets in the way, we're both understanding. If something happens and I can't do it, she'll step in and do extra, and vice versa. And that, yeah, and also because with publishing, as you know, things will change. So you might be expecting to get your edits here, and if something unavoidable is happening with the editor and it's 3 weeks late, and then maybe she's scheduled a trip to go visit her granddaughter, I'm like, and I'm not going to make her work when she only gets to see her 3 times a year. That's crazy. I'm like, no, don't worry about it, I'll handle it. Or if something's going on with me, or my dog was sick, anything like that, life, you just have to, and that is the great thing with working together, that you can help each other out for that if something comes up, and still meet your deadlines without a problem. Yeah, but she's helped me get better, because I will, she laughs. If I have my phone with me all the time, if I get a text or an email, immediately on it. And so if we get a question, we both have to answer, right? So then if I can't get her right away, I'm like flipping out. She's like, Lynn, it can wait an hour. It's not that, right? So she's helped me to become a little less and I've helped her to become a little bit more, on it. So, yeah.
Either of your children have any kind of an inspiration for you? Something like this in their future?
I feel like they're both I don't think any of her kids want to write, and they're all adults at this, point. Both my son and daughter, I think, are good writers, because I've seen in school, but if I say anything, no, mom. So but I think maybe one day, but I don't think they would want to, you know how it is. They're not going to give it up yet. Yeah. So. You sure? Come on. No?
I was gonna say, this is what I usually say in my tours, no, library, we don't allow you to be quiet, but I'm impressed by this book. I mean, I really love writing in it. I really love the characters. I will fess up, I haven't finished, so don't anybody tell me. I don't want to. Do you know how much I have to read? Okay, so I'm almost done with it. I'll get there.
That's right.
But congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, you've got so many great reviews. You've gotten so many, kudos on the book, and they're all well deserved.
Thank
you've had
you.
this wonderful tour. I looked at all the places on your website.
Yeah.
By the way, sign up, get on the website, take a look. It's been an awesome tour. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have to do the drawing. Yeah.
Okay,
So we have to rip these up, and you still have to tell me who that quote was from. Oh, it's a secret. And we don't know yet.
We don't know. I didn't.
Oh, okay. I'll
I was
figure
paying
it. These all right? Or how far? Oh,
It stops right here. So
Okay.
we're just gonna go right to here. These all get ripped.
okay. So Wendy is the first one that I draw is going to be for an advanced copy of Wendy's book, American Girl. which is coming out this fall. So it's not even out yet.
ARC, or they're called ARCs in the industry, and it's an advanced reader's copy.
So it's before, yeah, it's not for sale yet. So, and so the first winner is going to get that as well as a copy of the prequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish. And then the second winner will get the prequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish. So I don't know if you want to mix these up a little bit. I feel we have a bowl or something.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
A couple people want to know if they can get in on the raffle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Who did not get a ticket? Oh, but yours did, sorry.
You want me to walk it over there?
Yeah, there's 3 of you?
Yes, it was bad. I got it. Oh, and
Oh, Cheryl. There you go.
she just came.
Okay.
I want the. win.
Hello, dear.
It's all. If she wins, we know there's a fight.
Oh, right. All right, mixing them up. Okay, all right. All right, first one. Oh, gosh, these are a lot of numbers. 3895507. Okay, all right. So let me, and then if you want to, write down your address and I'll make sure that Wendy gets you your other
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Mhm. Okay, and then this one is, I'm not gonna even look, I'm just gonna go like that. 3895509. All right. There we go. You're welcome.
Lynn, if you brought books with you, Lynn, we have a table set in the lobby and somewhere we'll have to get your books on. And thank you all.
Take this one too. Thank you guys. Thank you. This is great. I should get a picture, you know,
Oh,
maybe everybody,
yeah,
get everybody together.
why don't we all? Stand up front here.
Yeah, that would be great.
Stand up front if you've got a book, bring it with you.
And I'll do it. Yeah, and I'll just,
I'll get a book, I'll get a picture of you in
perfect.
the store, so.
And I'm gonna give you my phone too.
Okay.
I can take this off now.
The group shot.
Line us, be this way now.
No, I want you to stand up front, and I'm going to face you when I'm standing right here. Perfect.
Yeah.
You have a book, stand in front.
That's the criteria.
Yes.
Oh,
It's okay, I'll make sure I slide in.
All right, so I want to see books and I want to see smiles. And I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's Lynn's. So this is the one that's gonna go on my newsletter, so you better really.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You guys are the best.
Thank
you.
Yes. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Extremely important.
We're good.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for your phone. I'm gonna use that up there. And I'll see you all at the table. Hello. Exactly. So glad you came, you super fan, you. This. Oh, good. What is it?
Well, I'm doing it from book club and I don't.
Yeah. Just need to take them to the garbage. Thank you.
I appreciate it. There's author events don't happen that often and it's more fun.
Yeah, we're gonna take about a month off. Yeah. These two sign for skills. Take one film.